It's Monday, October 20th, 2014, and this is your first ever TNM Sports World Series preview show. TNM Sports, just a couple brothers hanging out discussing all things sports. Today, specifically, the World Series. You know, this is just the second ever all wild card World Series. The first was in the 2002 World Series, which was between the San Francisco Giants, shock, and the Anaheim Angels, who are now the Los Angeles Angels. It was a very good series, but the Angels were victorious in that series. This year the American League has the home field advantage, which could play a huge factor in this series, given that the fans in Kansas City are extremely hungry, seeing as they haven't won a World Series since 1985, and this is actually their first playoff appearance since 1985. That place has been electric in all the home games I've seen so far. And under the new format of playoff expansion since 2012, this is the first team to feature a wild card team that played in that playing game, let alone two. So that's also a neat stat. You've got the Royals coming in on fire, first team ever to start off 8-0. Got the Giants kind of doing what they do, and so we're going to take a look at some aspects and make our predictions. What are you looking forward to most about this World Series, Matt?
Just seeing the fans in Kansas City get to experience something they haven't experienced in a long time. A bunch of them never before. And just the fire and passion they have for that team is just unreal. I think that's what's helped them get to this point a little bit, is just rallying behind that town, that city, and doing it for them. And so seeing Kansas City and all those young players, they're exciting to watch the way they do things, with the small ball, and just to see who wins out. Is it going to be the young team that's on fire? Or is it going to be the kind of chiseled, experienced veterans that are kind of just doing what they do and winning games? And just, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a very interesting World Series, and I'm ready for it to start.
For sure. So here at TNM Sports, what we do, we've got 5 categories that we're going to look at. We're going to tell you who we like for each team, and after we go through these 5 categories, we're going to give you an X factor for who we think wins. Just a little spoiler alert, we don't agree on who's going to win the World Series. We're going to give you the X factor on why those teams are going to win. Our Game 1 predictions, I think we're kind of on the fence about that one as well. And we're going to give you our series predictions. And so the 5 categories are starting pitching, bullpen, lineup, defense, and manager. I think that all those are going to play a huge roles into who wins this series, and we're going to really give you an in-depth breakdown of all those and who we're picking and why. And so first off, we're going to talk about the starting pitching lineups for both teams, and Matt and I are both in agreement here that we're going with San Francisco in this area. Personally, for me, the main reason that I'm going with San Francisco is Madison Bumgarner. The kid is an absolute stud. Right now he's got a 1.42 ERA this postseason. He's just been lights out. He's getting almost 8 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. You're guaranteed to get at least 7 innings per start out of this kid. Most of the time 8, if not a complete game. So that kind of helps preserve your bullpen, keep them fresh. And also, you're going to be getting just a dominant performance from him. Another good thing, and you've seen in the past with having a stud like Bumgarner at the top of your lineup, you can essentially pitch him 3 times in a 7-game series. You've seen it several times. Most notably, I think about like when CC Sabathia was in Milwaukee. They would throw him on 3 days rest. Even New York, they've done that a few times with him. Back when Josh Beckett was with the Red Sox, he did that in 2007 in the ALCS against the Indians. They were down 3-1. And Beckett pitched 3 times in that series. And you can, when you've got a guy pitching that dominant, and you can get 3 games with him, you're essentially saying, hey guys, if this goes the distance, we've only got to win 1 game with our other starters. So to me, having that stud at the top of the lineup kind of takes the pressure off of the rest of your pitchers. Now, obviously, you don't want to fall into a hole where you've got to go 7 games, but you got to feel good having a guy like Madison Bumgarner on the mound right now. Another factor in this that I think is really, really huge is the playoff experience kind of across the board for the starters. You've got Vogelsong, you've got Tim Hudson, you've got Jake Peavy, who coincidentally was just in the World Series and won the World Series last year. So the taste of that victory is still sweet, or it's still fresh for him. And so he can kind of bring that to these younger guys and kind of groom them up. I was listening to the radio the other day, and they were talking about how Peavy and Hudson have kind of helped groom Madison Bumgarner this year and kind of helped him take that next step. I see Madison Bumgarner being the next big thing in the NL West and in the major leagues as a whole. Everybody's riding the Clayton Kershaw bandwagon, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy was dominant during the regular season, but just looking at how dominant that Bumgarner's been in this postseason, to me, I'd take that any day. Over a guy that flounders in the postseason. Jake Peavy, like I said, the game 2 starter, he was coming off of the World Series win in Boston. He kind of had a rough season, before Boston traded him. He had about a 9.5 ERA and was just, it seemed like his season was going downhill fast. But then here, he's another guy that kind of when the lights get bright, he turns it on. This postseason, Peavy's 1-0 in his 2 starts with a 1.86 ERA, and he's got almost 5 strikeouts per 9 innings. He is kind of showing a little bit of that inconsistency. Still walking people. He's got 6 walks versus 5 strikeouts, but he's not giving up runs, and he's not giving up those home runs like he did during the season in Boston and during parts of the season even after he got traded. Then you got Tim Hudson, guy making his first World Series appearance. Just a guy that everybody is pumped for. Because he's just one of those guys that's been around. He's done it right. You've not heard anything out of him. And after he had that injury, that ankle injury that ended his time in Atlanta, everyone was kind of counting him out. So it's nice to see him bouncing back as well. Vogelsong struggled a little bit. He's got a little higher ERA, but he's a guy that's been there, that's done that, that's won the games. And so, we're going with San Francisco on the starting rotation. I expect to see their starters go 6, 7, 8 innings every time out, and really kind of keep this Royals lineup at bay, if you'd say that.
Yeah, and like you said, Tim Hudson, he's one of my favorite players in MLB, mostly because he spent a good amount of his career in Atlanta, who I pulled for many years. And he was just a kind of guy that, like you said, could teach up the young guys, Julio Teheran, Mike Minor, people like that, even Tommy Hanson a little bit when he was there. He said that Tim Hudson, really helped him, even though he kind of fell off. I'm not sure what happened to him, but so Tim Hudson's just a guy. He's well deserved of this. If he wins the World Series, it will be well deserved. He's a really good guy. I've watched several shows featuring him, seeing as he's was on the Braves, and he has this foundation that he goes and helps out his community and does it right. Like you said, you haven't heard anything bad out of him. He's not a trouble starter, and he's somebody that he's got experience, and I'm just glad to see him where he's at. I think he could have helped Atlanta out a lot this year with the injuries and young pitching they had, but it was his time to move on, and I'm glad he came here where he could be in a World Series with a chance to win, I believe, his first World Series. So next we're going to look at the bullpen, and again, we're both in agreement on who has the better bullpen, and that would definitely have to go to the Kansas City Royals. And the main reason of that being is just their 7, 8, and 9 guys. They all have sub 2 ERAs. Herrera is their 7th inning guy, and he's got a 1.41 ERA. Davis, bringing him in the 8th inning, he's got just a 1 ERA. And then Holland, who their closer has been, has a 1.44 ERA. Now, if you follow baseball at all, you know that anyone with a sub 2 ERA, and this is in the postseason, anyone with a sub 2 ERA in the postseason is doing good. Is a reliable pitcher for their team. And I think the biggest part of this and what makes them good is because the teams going in are looking at it that they have to score in the first 6 innings, and they have to have the lead going into the 7th, because if they don't have the lead, I don't know the exact stat on that, but I would say here recently, and obviously in the playoffs, the Kansas City is undefeated. But I would say going into the 7th inning, if Kansas City has a lead, they're going to win that game 9 times out of 10 because of these 1, 2, 7th, 8th, and 9th guys that they have throwing at you. I think the Giants have a decent bullpen. They've looked pretty good, but they have a few holes in the back end and in the middle relief that you don't see here in Kansas City. The only knock I would have on Kansas City is that their middle relief guys uh, haven't got much time recently. They haven't pitched since October 2nd, so is rust going to be a factor? But I think when you're looking at bullpen, you definitely have to give that edge to Kansas City. What you think?
Yeah, you've got to like Kansas City here. I mean, just with a 7, 8, 9 back end guys like that in the bullpen, they're going to shut you down. It shortens the game. That gives your start. That again, it takes pressure off of those starting pitchers to say, hey, if I can get the lead through 6 innings, these bullpen guys can come in and shut it down. I think that Kansas City will have to kind of be creative with how they use their bullpen guys, but I think that if they can play their game like you said after 6 innings, if Kansas City's got a lead, you got to feel pretty confident with that. Next, we're going to talk about the lineups. I think we're kind of at odds here. I'm going with Kansas City. Kansas City is the first team ever to make the World Series after finishing last in walks and last in home runs in the league, which to me is really surprising. Their guy Alex Gordon, he led their team in home runs and RBIs during the regular season with a whopping 19 home runs and 74 RBIs. And it's not because these players aren't good. They've shown flashes here in the postseason of power, of making those clutch hits. I think that part of the reason no one really stood out on this Royals lineup is because from 1 to 9, the Royals are just, they're consistent. And I go back to the game 4 clincher against Baltimore. They scored 2 runs with the ball never leaving the infield. They got the infield single, the hit by a pitch, a sacrifice bunt, and then they scored 2 runs on the wild pitch and or on the thrown away ball. And so it's not pretty. Yeah, it's not the flashy big deep ball, but I think that I like the Royals lineup because they just get the ball in play, and then they use their speed, they use their athleticism to manufacture runs. It's not about having to get the power, or anything like that from any other players. And they're only batting a 259 here in the postseason. But the biggest difference here is through 8 postseason games, they've hit 8 home runs, whereas in the regular season, through 162 regular season games, they only hit 95 runs. So they're averaging 1 home run a game here, whereas they were slightly less than that during the regular season. The 2 guys that stand out for me at the middle of the lineup. And this is why I'm giving the edge to Kansas City, is Lorenzo Cain and Eric Hosmer. And I like them. They're hot right now. During the ALCS combined, they had a 466 average, and so you've got to go with the hot hand right now. You've seen it in sports so many times. When a team gets hot at the right time, look at Connecticut in the NCAA tournament this past year, or both the times that the Giants won the NFL Super Bowl. Just the team that's hot right now, you got to roll with them. And right now, Kansas City puts the ball in play better than anybody I've seen in a while, and so I've got to go give the slight edge to Kansas City on the lineup.
Like you said, I think we disagree a little bit on this one. We've agreed on the last two, and I think that I'm picking the Giants with that one, and it goes back to just mostly experience. They've been there before, and I think that the Giants and the Kansas City are kind of in the same boat. I mean, yeah, everybody talks about how hot the Royals are and how they're undefeated, but it's not like the Giants are having to take these series to 7 or 5, if you would, to win. The first series went 4 games, they won it 3-1. Second series went 5 games, they won it 4-1. So they're hot right now too, and with both teams being hot, a lot of people like to gravitate toward the Kansas City Royals because they're just exciting to watch. They're young, they're fast. Like TJ said, they don't have to have the ball leave the park a whole lot to score runs. Not even the infield. Like he said, they scored 2 runs, just putting the pressure on the defense because of their speed. But when you got Hunter Pence, who's been proven before, you got Pablo Sandoval, who is swinging a hot bat right now. He's hitting close to 500 in the postseason, and he hit 500 this past series against the Cardinals, and he's swinging a hot bat. You even got the pitchers in there. Tim Hudson, he hit 500 in the very few at bats he got in the series against the Cardinals. So you got experience, you got more power in the lineup. Even though, like he said, the Royals are getting it done when they need to, but I just feel like the Giants are too. And I feel like on the big stage, the Giants hitters in Pence, in Buster Posey, in Pablo Sandoval, in Angel Pagan, Michael Morris, and Brandon Crawford even, I think, they're just top to bottom. They're deeper, they're more experienced, and I think that in the end, they will have the better lineup here in this World Series. And next, we're going to talk about defense. Again, we're back to kind of agreeing on this one. Kansas City has, I think this one's a pretty easy one to pick. The Giants haven't been bad on defense, but Kansas City has been fabulous on defense. They have, just been able to get the balls in the outfield. With their speed, that helps them on defense too because they can run down balls. They can, get to plays on the infield, and they're just not making errors. They're not making mistakes right now, and that is a big part of their success as well. Is just their pitcher not only being able to count on their bullpen, but being able to count on their defense. Hey, if I make a mistake, my defense might be able to bail me out. And so I think on defense, you would definitely have to give the edge to the Royals. Like I said, it's not because the Giants have played bad on defense, but it's just the Royals. They're playing well on defense. Fielding their position well, not making mistakes, and that's why I would have to give. And we both would give the advantage to the Royals on defense.
Yeah, it seems like to me every night that there's a Kansas City Royals game here in this postseason, there's going to be at least 1, 2, maybe even 3 top plays during that game. You've got whether it's Alex Gordon, selling out and running full speed into the wall to make a catch, or Mike Moustakas flipping over into the fans, or or Lorenzo Cain just making a crazy grab out there in center field, just really fielding their position well and just being very consistent. So, like Matt said, we like Kansas City there. The next thing we're going to talk about is the manager. I think this is kind of the obvious choice here, is Bruce Bochy. Since Bochy's been with the Giants, He's never lost a postseason series. He's 8-1 in the World Series as the manager of the Giants. Now you could say, well, the teams they were playing weren't that great back then. But he's 8-1 in the World Series. Never lost a series. Did you know? And I just came across this statistic. Bruce Bochy is also the all-time wins leader in the modern baseball era in the National League West. Um, obviously 2 rings never seems to hurt. I think Bochy's a future first ballot Hall of Famer. And so you got to go with them. Another thing, and this is kind of the biggest question mark for me in Kansas City this year, is their manager. Ned Yost kind of has that reputation of making some kind of sketchy, decisions with his lineups, with his bullpen use and things like that. With none of which he's done yet in the World Series or in the playoffs, or even this year with those Royals. But I just always, I guess it's just kind of burned into my memory. The is that 2007 series when he was the manager of the Brewers. They had that 8.5 game lead in June. I mean, just surging before the All-Star break over the Cubs, and just had a terrible second half collapse, and the Cubs wound up taking the division by 2 games there. And then even in 2008, when they were in a similar situation, not quite as big of a lead in the wild card, and wound up blowing, those as well. You could say that those Brewers, but he did bring those Brewers back. The Brewers were kind of a joke for a while, and he helped lead them back, kind of what he's done with Kansas City. Building a good system through your farm system rather than going out and spending a lot of money. And so, that's kind of the biggest question mark to me, but you've got to go with Bruce Bochy here. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. 2 rings, a lot of wins. This is his 4th World Series appearance, because he did make the World Series with the Padres back in '98 when they got swept by the Yankees. And so you got to go Bruce Bochy there for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. Again, you just got to go with experience, and I feel like I'm just saying it over and over. But that's really what it falls back on, is just the experience. Now, Ned Yost, he is a good manager. I feel like he wouldn't have this young Kansas City Royals team playing the way they are if he wasn't a good manager. But who's proven in this situation that they can go and win World Series and make the right decisions in the World Series? Because the World Series is different than playoffs. There's more pressure, obviously. You have everything. Your whole season is on the line. You fought hard to get to this point, and your whole season relies on this 7 games or 5 games or whatever you end up playing to. And I just think Bruce Bochy's more proven in that situation. Like you said, 8-1 in the World Series with the Giants. Never lost a postseason series with the Giants. So I don't see him starting now. I think that I heard somebody on SportsCenter say the other day, they were interviewing him, and it said, it just seems like in every situation you make the best decision. You see managers all the time making these decisions and they're not panning out. Pinch runners, pitch hitters, who to bring in from the bullpen. It just seems like in this postseason, every decision that he has made, for the most part, has been the right decision. Like I said, he knows how to coach in the World Series. I think he's going to make the right decisions here. And I think, experience, again, is why you got to go with the Giants' Bruce Bochy here. And so I think now we're going to pick our X factors for this series. And there again, I think the X factor is just going to be experience. I've said it. I feels like I'm just beating a dead horse here, saying it over and over and over. But it's been proven that the team with the experience gets it done. And my biggest concern with the Royals is this. 1, they're inexperienced, and 2, they've never lost in the postseason, most of them. And so what happens if they go out there, game 1, and, you were talking about Madison Bumgarner earlier. What happens if he goes out and pitches a complete game shutout, gives up 2 hits, and they lose 2-0? What happens there? Are they able to bounce back? As to where I feel like if the Giants with their experience, if they somehow get beat by a big game James Shields in game one, they're going to be able to regroup and say, okay, it's just one game. We have a whole series. We got to focus on this next game instead of harping on this last game. So I think the experience for the Giants is going to be a huge factor. But another factor that I would, kind of a sub factor that I would put, and this is also for the Giants to win the series, is just going to be scoring early. We mentioned it. If they get to the seventh inning and they're down 1-0 or 2-1 or even 5-4, whatever, their chances are I would pick the Royals in that case. They've proven that from the seventh inning on, their bullpen just shuts you down. So it's going to be interesting in the World Series, like I said, and that's just a few X factors that I see playing a big role in who comes out on top.
I agree. Experience is key. But these Royals, they're they're kind of just rolling with it, man. They are saying all the right things in the media. They're saying, "Hey, we're taking it one game at a time. We've got to just worry about winning this next game." And so to be so young, they seem to draw maturity from their manager. For me, my biggest X factor for this World Series is going to be the speed of the Royals. And the reason that speed is such a big deal for me is because you can never count the Royals out of a game because of that. Look at the wild card game. They were down huge late in that game. They stole 6 bases while they were trailing in that game, and you can arguably say that their speed is what got them back into the game. They've stolen 13 bases this postseason. They haven't relied as heavily on the steal in their first 2 series as they did in that wild card game. But I think in order for the Royals to be successful, they're going to have to get back to playing small ball and stealing those bases and things like that. Another key factor: look in Game 3 when Tim Hudson's starting. Look for the Royals to really try and take advantage of moving on him. Base runners were 15 out of 18 steal when they were attempting to steal on Hudson this season. So keep an eye out on that in Game 3. But I just think that speed on the bases as well as in the field is going to be the biggest X factor for the Royals, which means obviously I'm picking the Royals in 5. I think that they're the hot team right now. They've got the better bullpen, they've got the better lineup, they've got the better defense. They say defense wins championships, and I think that speed's going to be too much for the Giants to handle. I do like Bumgarner in Game 1, but I think ultimately that the Royals are going to pull it out in 5.
I'm gonna take a sweep in this series. I'm gonna say Giants sweep it away from Kansas City. I've thought about it a lot. I would love to see Kansas City sweep because that would mean 12-0 in the playoffs, and just that would be one of the best, if not the best, playoffs appearances by a single team in all-time history. But I'm going with a sweep here, and it might surprise some people. Some people may not like it. Some people may not agree with it. Experience. I've said it before, and I'll say it again and again and again. Experience plays a huge role in the World Series, and I just think that this young Royals team, like Tia said, they're saying all the right things. Taking it one game at a time. But will they be able to implement it when I feel like Bumgarner goes out there and shuts them down? How do they bounce back from that? I'm going to say they don't. I'm going to say they get down on themselves. They're young. I'm going with the Giants in a sweep. I've thought about it. Who am I going to pick? Because obviously the Kansas City Royals are kind of the fancy pick. Everybody wants to see them win. I think if you're not a Giants fan, you kind of want to see the Royals win just because it'd be a good story. But yeah, I think I'll go with the Giants in a sweep, 4-game sweep of the Royals in the 2014 MLB World Series. So that's my prediction.
All right, you heard it here. I've got the Royals in 5. Matt likes it to be a quick and easy World Series championship for the Giants. I'm assuming another reason he likes the Giants is because it's an even number year, and in 2010 and 2012 the Giants won it. Another cool story from this World Series before we wrap this up. Brandon Finnegan, the former TCU pitcher, now pitcher for the Kansas City Royals, who was their first round pick in this year's draft. The 2014 draft, he was the 17th pick overall. Is becoming, well, if he makes an appearance in this in this World Series, he'll be the first pitcher to play in the College World Series and the Major League World Series in the same calendar year, which is unreal. You know, he was drafted in June, called up in September 1st to pitch for these Royals. Pitched a a huge played a huge role in that wild card game. Pitched a couple good innings in it, and so that's a really cool story to watch for Brandon Finnegan, number 27, the young buck from TCU for the Royals. That's all we've got for you folks today. Again, thank you for listening. Please share us on Facebook. If you're not following us, facebook.com/TNM Sports. We've got our blog coming soon, tnmsports18.blogspot.com, and on Twitter.
And that's at TNM Sports 18 as well.
TNM Sports, just a couple of brothers hanging out talking about sports.